Vamos a continuar. Y ahora llega un momento para mí bastante interesante y seguramente que todas y todos habéis estado jugueteando con un cacharrito que tenéis ahí. No es un Wallman, ¿vale? No busquéis la cinta de radiocassette. Es un traductor, ¿de acuerdo? Bueno, él no es un traductor, es un aparato que nos va a servir para la siguiente ponencia, para la presentación que vamos a tener ahora, en la cual quienes quieran que la ponencia sea traducida a español, pues os pone los cascos. Y si no, no os preocupéis porque vamos a tener una ponencia en la cual el siguiente ponente, Lowe, es el que va a realizar esta situación. Cuestiones, mientras que terminan de microfonar a Jeff para que comience. Como bien ha comentado Juan Carlos, vamos totalmente puntuales, ¿eh? Vamos totalmente puntuales. A las 12 acabamos. Y cuando terminemos esto, vamos a ir al café. Vamos a ir al café y os recuerdo, puntualidad total. Bueno, Lowe, Vicepresidente ejecutivo de Smart Technologies. So, thank you to join us, Jeff. Es tu tiempo.
Thank you, Jose Luis.
A pleasure.
Buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. What an absolute pleasure to be here in this incredible room, in this incredible city, in this incredible region. I'm so honored to be here, spending time with you, talking about all things education technology. My name is Lowe, as Jose Luis said. I come from Calgary, Canada. That's where Smart Technologies headquarters are. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Calgary, Canada, but I will tell you I left there on Tuesday, and I had to shovel the snow out of my driveway to come here, so this is just fine. This is just fine by me. So we are here today to talk about digital transformation. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I hope this isn't too depressing or controversial, but digitization on its own is not the answer, I don't believe, to helping our students and our teachers to better outcomes. So I think we really need to take stock of that and understand why. But let me show you some startling data. Did you know that there's more money wasted in education technology than almost any other industry in the world? Is that there's $100 billion industry put into education technology. Yet, time after time, study after study, we find that this technology is not purpose-built. It's not actually being utilized or not being utilized to the best benefit of actually driving transformation. So digital, yes. Transformation, not all the time. It takes something special, and it takes being very purposeful to get digitization. I think sometimes what we forget is, yes, this is about digitization, but this is about people. And what she needs is the tools to be able to develop and learn and find her purpose. And sometimes I think we forget about that with just a fixation on the latest technology without remembering that this, at the end of the day, is about people. So here's a curve. This is 60 years of technology in the classroom. So if you look here, starting in the 1960 time frame, overhead projectors, calculators, then the first computer, document cameras, interactive projectors, interactive boards, tablets, Chromebooks, and now, of course, here we are up here with robotics, virtual reality, AI. So let's do an exercise, okay? If this is the curve of investment, and I draw the curve of student outcomes, what do you think the relationship is between the two? So I'll give two choices. So one is this is the student outcome line. We'll call that line A. And this is an alternative student outcome line, line B. So if the black line is student outcomes against the spend, what do you think Do you think A or B? B. Everybody, I do this all over the... This is actually, I do this talk all over the world, and when I put up this chart, everybody automatically knows that it's B. But that's the environment that we live in, is we live in an environment where there's so much technology that's pushed into the classroom, where the outcomes are just languishing and flat overall. So there's the actual line. But this doesn't have to be all depressing. I don't mean to depress everybody before lunch. There's the good news is you can get above the line. The key here is to stay in the green. And there's all sorts of amazing examples of organizations, schools, leadership organizations that are getting above the line in the green. And that includes right here in Castilla-La Mancha. So the key is, how do you do it? What is that formula for success? So let's take an example. Let's talk about teaching maths. Grade 5 maths. Everybody can relate to teaching fractions. So let me explain 3 stages of digitization as it pertains to teaching math. The first one is one that I don't think anybody really wants, which is no digital. So there's no technology at all. The kids are bored. They're sitting in rows. The teacher is at the front. Students in rows of desks. This is kind of how it feels. That's no good. So, okay, that's phase 1. It's not much of a phase. There's no digital, okay? Here, this is an interesting though, this next phase, phase 2, this is what often gets confused for digital transformation. Okay, well, we've taken the lesson and we've digitized it. So now instead of having a paper book, it's an electronic book. Now maybe instead of having a blackboard and chalk or a dry erase board, it's an interactive digital board. Okay. Is that innovative? Is that transformation? No. And I think that's the key. I think that's why a lot of times that line stays flat, is what I think we need to move to is this third phase of active learning. And that's where you see the results in green. What do you notice about this picture? First of all, not what we say sage on the stage for the teacher, it's more guide on the side. The different learning environment, combining different types of technology also with physical aids. So this is now active, and this I think is where the future is. I think this is what leading organizations are doing. So let's get this out of PowerPoint though. We have with us today the one and only Jose Luis. He our top education consultant in Spain. Why don't we do an actual exercise and show what this really looks like? Active learning for grade 5 maths. What would that look like?
Okay, I think we can... Perdona, bueno, yo voy a hablar en mi idioma, ¿no? Mejor. Es que lo que tiene tener al jefe al lado, que al final te sale. Bueno, pues yo creo que vamos a hacer algo así práctico, rápido en un momento, y os voy a dar aquí una clase teórica, etcétera. Pero no, a mí me gusta un poco esto de actividad, y voy a pedir, por ejemplo, pues a Fernando, ¿vale? A Fernando y a Jesús Torres que por favor me echen una mano. ¿Dónde tengo a Jesús? Perfecto. Y es que simplemente, bueno, que me vayan componiendo un poco de cuestiones de fracciones y demás, porque así me va a permitir seguiros contando 2 o 3 cosillas. Es muy facilón, no os quejéis, ¿vale? Simplemente que hay que poner. O sea que estamos hablando de componer. Estamos hablando de active learning, estamos hablando de aprendizaje activo. Y aprendizaje activo no solamente es estar moviéndonos, ¿verdad? Es que mis estudiantes estén colaborando, es que mis estudiantes estén realizando acciones. Me gustaría que también, además de que lo pusieseis alguna, que la colocaseis, incluso a ver quién se atreve a hacer... ¿Cómo se llamaba esa fracción? ¿Cómo se leía esa fracción? Podéis ir escribiéndolo. Estamos hablando de aprendizaje activo. Estamos hablando de que ellos están colaborando, que lo están haciendo con el panel interactivo. Esta misma situación que podemos hacer no solamente la realizan en el panel interactivo, sino que la van a realizar mis estudiantes en sus dispositivos. Vamos a estar hablando de actividades compartidas de forma totalmente colaborativa. Perfecto, genial. Oye, os voy a poner otra cosilla, que estáis aquí como muy aburriditos. No, no, no os vayáis, no os preocupéis. Y es que yo creo que al final, lo de las fracciones y las monedas, al final también estamos componiendo, ¿no? O sea, que yo creo que me podéis hacer ahí alguna composición ahí con dinero, a ver si saben estos de cuartos. Bueno, y simplemente por terminar, Jeff, porque es prácticamente, transmitiros que cuando hablamos de aprendizaje activo, hablamos de que mis estudiantes estén creando contenidos. Hablamos de que mis estudiantes estén realizando estas acciones en el panel interactivo, que las estén realizando en cualquier dispositivo, porque hablamos de esa integración, ¿de acuerdo? Y estamos hablando de que yo como docente poder tener todo su trabajo, tanto lo que están haciendo aquí como lo que me lo voy a llevar a casa directamente, como el que están realizando desde cualquier dispositivo suyo. Y yo creo que lo más importante ahora, Jeff, es continuar con tu presentación. So, please, Jeff,
Okay.
you can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Un aplauso.
Okay, so keep these three stages in mind. Passive learning, no technology. The middle area, I call that substitution. Okay, so passive substitution of books with electronic books, and then active learning. So, but this is not just an abstract example. I want to show you some real examples from all over the world. Again, Smart Technologies is a global company. Here's a map of all the places that we do business. So I'm just going to show you a couple of different examples of organizations that are following this active learning. Let me start with South Africa. So I want to show a quick video of South Africa. Here's the Minister of Education in Gauteng province. So that's Minister Lessufi. There is his quote. And this story started around 8 years ago. And it really reminds me a lot of what we're doing right here in Castilla-La Mancha, is it starts with leadership vision of what it's going to take to drive outcomes. And after coming up with this vision statement, what happened next was a very robust training plan, not unlike we've been talking about this morning, and not unlike what we have at Talavera. And in fact, it started with the biggest training deployment of teachers ever on the continent of Africa. 18,000 teachers in one room. Imagine 18 times this room in one teaching session. And then it was fanned out all across the region. And then, of course, being very purposeful in terms of what outcomes are we trying to achieve, not just putting in the technology in the classroom. So, long story short, this particular area of South Africa went to #1 rated across all of Africa in terms of its overall academic efforts. And I'll show the next clip, and one particular school was recognized as the first exemplary school in the whole continent of Africa. So here's the picture of the training room. Ended abruptly. All right, so amazing story there. By the way, in a minute, I'm going to show a QR code, and if you want any more information on these stories, because they're much longer, you'll be able to get them. I want to talk about a special needs school now. How does technology apply in special needs? And this is a school called Grace Orchard, which is dedicated to special needs or accessibility in Singapore. And again, it starts with vision. And the vision is not, let's have a spot over here and do something very specific and dedicated to special needs students. It's technology needs to be pervasive throughout the entire learning journey for special needs students. And let's take a quick look at a video of what's happening in Singapore.
So that they are able to use technology meaningfully and purposefully so
I don't know if the quote was translated, but I think it bears repeating when he says there's nothing that replaces a great teacher, but a teacher with technology can be transformational. That's the idea. So that's great. We talked about South Africa, we talked about Singapore, but what about right here in Castilla-La Mancha? Are there not some amazing stories to be told here? Jose Luis, what are you seeing here in terms of some amazing stories?
Que tenemos múltiples historias, yo creo. Aquí tenéis algún ejemplo, ¿no? Múltiples escuelas, cientos de escuelas en Castilla-La Mancha, cientos de centros educativos en Castilla-La Mancha que están innovando desde hace tiempo, desde hace mucho tiempo. Este es simplemente un pequeño ejemplo de una pequeña escuela rural en un pequeño pueblo donde yo estaba dando clase. Y esto yo creo que, Jeff, al final es una muestra de las acciones que realmente se están haciendo aquí, se están haciendo en Castilla-La Mancha desde hace mucho tiempo, innovando con nuestros estudiantes, innovando con nuestros docentes.
Thank you. So again, we have so many stories all around the world of these incredible educators, incredible leaders and administration getting this value. So if you would like to read any more or just look for a part in the world that you're interested in, scan this code and you'll be taken to our database of customer stories who are getting in the green. That's basically what that is, because that is our commitment as SMART, is really working with organizations to drive outcomes, not just being a tech company. So now I'm going to tell you something that is really interesting in terms of everything you've seen so far in the past 15 minutes. So we saw an amazing math lesson, active learning, and then we saw quick stories from South Africa and from Singapore and from right here in Spain. Did you know they all have one thing in common? That they all followed the same approach. They might not know that they followed the approach, but they did. Because we have been studying this, and there's actually a very similar, familiar formula for success. And it's quite simple. And are you guys interested in seeing what the formula for success is in ed tech? All right. Here it is. You start with the teaching practices. You start with the pedagogy. That's the first step. The next step is software. How does the software map to the teaching and learning practices? The next step is hardware. What's the best hardware? Tablet, notebook, smartboard, projector, VR, to fit the software, to fit the teaching. And then, critically, there's one thing I've left out. Training and PD. And the training and the PD is around everything together. So that's it. That's the formula for success. It doesn't have to be that hard, but time and time again, this formula is not followed. Instead, what we see, and this is what leads to the red, is start with hardware, maybe then have a discussion with software. Training and PD around the tech, leaving out the teaching practices. So I just bring this up because I think this is so important in terms of what we see of why aren't we getting the maximum benefit out of technology in the classroom. We spent all this time and energy, we even did all this training. Why isn't it being used? Because the training needs to be around the pedagogy, the teaching practices, with, again, a great teacher with the tech, not just training on the tech. Okay, so hopefully that resonates with people. Hopefully, again, it's not a complex formula, but we at SMART have had so much interest in this area that we were asked around 5 or 6 years ago to expand on this and say, well, it is more complicated than that, right? Like if you just take professional development or teaching practices, what are the sub-practices? How would I expand upon this? So we have a research project that's really interesting and that Castilla-La Mancha has been a part of. And basically what we did is we didn't do our own primary research. There's all sorts of research projects in the world that cover this topic of outcomes. And you can see here they're from these logos up here: OECD, the European Commission, ISTE, CASEL, etc. So basically we take our formula for success and all of this research, we put it in a blender, we press the button, and what comes out of that? And basically, there's a couple things I'm going to show you. The first is what kind of technologies drive the active learning that we've been talking about here the most. So there's a few key types of technologies that are really over-indexing to getting value. And the second thing it says is there's 32 practices that fall out of this funnel that says, yes, there's a simple formula for success, pedagogy, software, hardware, wrapped in training. And that then expands, if you want to get more detailed, into 32, okay? So let me show you the first data, which is what kind of technology is driving outcomes. So these are the biggest ones, and what you're seeing here are the bars in green are organizations that have the most value that are using these sorts of technologies. And against the red ones are lower outcomes, and so they're not using these sorts of technologies as much. So where the eye should probably go is here, because this is the highest one, and the biggest gap is lesson creation software. So what kind of technology drives outcomes? Well, our database, and this, by the way, is global data you're looking at. Over 6,000 organizations have taken this assessment so far. And so far, that's the leading one. The next one would be here, evaluation or assessment software, collaboration software, gamification software. And then this one over here is kind of the opposite. It says the companies that are organizations that are getting the lower outcomes are more using projector-based software than interactive, or projector-based boards rather than interactive boards. Okay? So there's a little bit of information on what kind of technology is driving the most. Now here's the 32 capabilities. So the 32 capabilities breaks down into these 5 areas: strategic planning, integration of technology and learning, professional development, infrastructure, and then blended and hybrid learning. So they're modules, basically. And each one of these, there's around 6 best practices. So let me show you what this looks like. Uh-oh, slide's not advancing for some reason. There we go. Okay, good. So this is what we call a radar chart. So let me explain what you're looking at, and I just want to explain this because in a second, I want to show you your results. So that's why I'm going to just take my time with this, okay? This is all of Europe. So it's a few thousand records, okay? So whole bunch of organizations and educational institutions and administrations in Europe have taken this survey about what does it take to get into the green, okay? And this is what we found. So let me just explain. So these items around the perimeter are the 32 practices. So here's one, professional development planning. That's a best practice. It's a best practice to have a plan for your professional development of your teachers. And if we go around, here's, all the way around, then we'll end up here at number 32, okay? Now how the line works is, let's take professional development planning. If you have no proficiency or competency, you're not doing professional development planning at all, 0, then you'd be here, okay? If, on the other hand, professional development planning is elite, there's no one in the world that's better at professional development planning than you, then you'd be at the edge. And so where it ends up in Europe is right here. And then you go the same exact for all the practices, and that's what you get. Does everybody understand how the map works? Okay. So here's where it gets really interesting. What if we could compare the Europe to the UK? Because UK is often held up as a standard, doing a lot of things right. This data says, yeah, the UK is doing a lot of things on average at a higher proficiency level than the rest of Europe. And so what you're looking for here is white space. So here, for example, that's a pretty big gap. Professional development planning, A little bit better in the UK than the rest of the world. Here's another one. SEL approach, social and emotional learning approach. A little bit better, okay? All right, well that's interesting, UK. What about outside of Europe? Do we have any data there? Yeah, I could show you the US, I could show you Canada, I could show you Australia. Here's Australia, and again, well that's interesting. Now you're seeing Australia's doing some things even better, but then there's also some things where they're lagging on. And by the way, we convene different governments together to compare their data and to learn from each other. That's a big reason that we do this data. But let me show you the rest. So the light blue line, that's the whole database. So that's 6,000, 7,000 records, whatever our database is up to now. So there's your, again, you can see the radar map, and you can see how the world is doing at following the outcomes, following the practices that get to outcomes. But we're here in Castilla-La Mancha for a Congress on digitalization. So isn't the most important question, how are we doing? So, your administration took this assessment a few days ago. Would you like to see the results? I'll tell you, I worked with the team and I asked the team here in Castilla-La Mancha to take the assessment, and I kind of already knew what the results would be because we've been working together so closely. And I was not disappointed. So here's your results in green. So this is really remarkable data. It really is. And of course, your mind goes to the white space. So look at this. That is a significant gap against the rest of the world in the methodologies that you're following to get outcomes with your students. In what areas? Professional development evaluation, training options, professional learning focus, professional development planning. What else? Look it up here. That's a big one. Student device and internet support is a best practice, and it's being performed right here better than the rest of the world. What else? Network infrastructure, collaboration opportunities. So this is something that you all should feel incredibly proud of, is being set up for success following the practices. Now, I know where some of your eyes is probably going is, well, Jeff, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are some areas where it's not as strong, right? So you're right. Here, what that one is student participation. It doesn't mean students participating in the technology. It means actually involving the students in planning the strategy for the technology before it goes into the classroom. So it tends to be a lower one across the world, and it's a lower one here. These two as well, student involvement and parent involvement. So if we kind of had to say this is a report card, it would be look at all these amazing areas where we're doing phenomenal, and then here's a couple of areas that we can improve upon. And so our commitment in working with you is this is something we're going to chart over time. We're going to do this assessment on a regular basis and have a way to gauge our report card. Again, we don't want that curve of investment saying, how are we doing? I don't know. We want to say specifically, we know how we're doing because we have a methodology to track it. So I'm almost out of time, but I did want to mention something. Oh, one more thing before I leave this. Here now you see the results just on their own. This research is available to anyone. It's not something that we charge for. It's on our website. If you just wanted to rate a school, you can do that. If you just wanted to rate, obviously we can get right up to a country level or a global level. So if you're interested in that, my contact details are on the last slide, and you can just contact me and we'll set it up for you. Because we want to continue to grow this global database of what it takes to actually drive outcomes. The other thing is the other way to do this radar map, which is really interesting, is instead of the line being a region, what if that line was a role? So for example, teacher versus administrator versus technology lead. And then you can see, are we all aligned in terms of the different roles within education? So we can do a role-based comparison as well as a country-based comparison. But now I'm starting to get too much into the research. So let me move on. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this picture. Because remember at the start I said it's about people. And we need to help her to grow and develop and learn and find her purpose. Who did you think I was talking about? The little girl? Both of them. Both of them. So this is something that's incredibly exciting is 2 days ago, we had the honor of signing an agreement with Castilla-La Mancha to make an investment in digitization for our seniors. And this is something that's starting in 200 senior care facilities to bring the same advantages of interactivity, social, emotional, physical benefits, cognitive benefits with this same sort of technology. So we make sure that our elders aren't left behind and aren't left out of this equation. This commitment that we signed upon a successful pilot is going to lead to job creation of software development roles right here in Spain. And also, and really importantly, we plan to make Talavera a global hub of innovation, not just for education technology, but for elderly care technology. So this is incredibly important and rewarding work. It really expands your premise from a student is a K to 12 and then higher education to a concept of lifelong learning. And when we learn and our brains are stimulated, that's what life is all about. And so we just couldn't be more proud to be partnering with Castilla-La Mancha on not just education technology, but senior care technology. And I'll give you one example of how this works. We were recently in Australia, and there's a lady in a home, and she has dementia, and she has selective mutism, which means she hasn't talked for weeks. And we're setting up a smart board and actually just getting ready to do the training. We weren't even doing the training yet. And one of our team put up 4K imagery, like drone imagery of different beautiful settings in the world. Beaches, sunrises, and then a snowy capped mountain scene and beautiful 4K image. And it was just a drone image, and it was animated. And all of a sudden this lady, Rosa, out of the blue says, "Oh, I've been to the snow." And everybody, you can imagine, hadn't talked in weeks. What just happened? And she had just been enlightened by the fact that she'd been triggered with a memory. Next thing you know, we're bringing up Google Maps. She's showing the street that she grew up on and getting engaged and really looking forward to the session. So something as simple as that is what we're talking about. But let's take a look at what's happening right here in Talavera, because we are just starting this pilot. We're already seeing incredible returns, and we put together a short video of things that have just happened in the last week or two with regards to this pilot.
Y no lo he visto en mi vida. quiero aprender a hacer esto.
Pues mira, la tecnología es fantástica. Primero porque no contábamos con este tipo de material y la verdad que tiene muchos usos y hay 1000 opciones, ¿no? Y luego también, sobre todo, ver la carencia de los abuelos, ¿no? Al ver algo tan desconocido y tan impresionante para ellos. Entonces, pues bueno, genial. Les ha estimulado sobre todo mucho la motivación, la competitividad. Como anécdota, un señor que lleva poco tiempo en la residencia y me había comentado que llevaba mucho tiempo sin reír, que no sabía por qué anímicamente no estaba mal, pero... Y el primer día que estuvo interactuando con la pantalla no paraba de reír y digo, Antonio, mira que bien, lo que hemos conseguido, o sea que ya es un paso grandísimo.
So in conclusion, what's next? What's tomorrow for innovation? We've touched on it. Active learning, the importance of that. Equality, all races, religions, all races, all people from all walks of life, and people of all ages deserve to have the best in technology. And then authentic connections. You know, we talk a lot about connections at SMART. Our ethos is connections that matter. You know, connections is really a core human need when you think about it. And technology, when it's done right, that's what we've been focusing on today. Technology can really help to make the connections that matter. And once again, I'm so proud to be here representing SMART, and our partnership together with Castilla-La Mancha is so meaningful to us. You are clearly taking a leading role in terms of how you're approaching technology. Sessions like this, having a center like in Talavera, the announcement we made in senior care 2 days ago, it really is our privilege. So let's keep making the connections that matter together in Castilla-La Mancha. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions at all for me, here's how to get in touch. Thank you very much.